of the fact that pluralism in terms of belief in different religions will exist. It's a reality. Because the verse starts with, if your Lord had wished, He could have made all those on this earth believers. Do you then wish to force people to become believers? In other words, if God Himself did not force people to become believers, then who do you think you are? Islam has always been portrayed in a bad light, and it gives an impression as if the religion of Islam chooses violence as its first alternative all the time. This is actually contrary to the philosophy and the teachings of Islam, which unfortunately the Malay Muslims in Malaysia, we have a special brand of Islam, which is UMNO Islam. People ask me why everywhere else the word Allah is allowed for non-Muslims to use. I answer, because everywhere else UMNO doesn't exist. This attempt to Malayize Islam is the fundamental problem of the Malay Muslims. If you refer to the Quranic verses, when it talks of war, and this is something which perhaps we differ, but in Islam, what God says in the Quran is Uzina lilladhina qatalu bi'annahum zulimu. It is allowed for those who are fought against, or on whom war is declared, to fight back because they have been victims of injustice. Right? There's another verse which says, وَإِنَّهُمْ لِسِلْمِ فَاجْنَحْ لَهَا. And if they, your opponents or your enemies, lean towards peace, then you lean towards it as well. So in Islam, the question of violence has always been defensive in nature, right? Specifically if you are under attack. We do not concur with the Christians on the question of turning the other cheek. I mean, sounds good, you know. I mean, I beg to differ with the third panelist, but sometimes there is no option from the Islamic and the Muslim point of view, right? And as far as we are concerned, we feel that we've been victims since the colonial time and after independence, and the Middle East has always been a center of violence due to various political considerations. Now the question is world peace possible? For as long as there is injustice, for as long as there are countries and nation states that wish to dominate, and for as long as these actions of dominating others in other countries is accepted because it's the rule of the mighty. And whoever is strong, whoever is powerful, he can impose his own set of values. For as long as this kind of situations exist, to me personally, I find it very difficult to say that world peace can be a reality. However, I believe that if the individual, as what was presented by our main speaker just now, the individual inculcates in himself the love and the need for peace and mutual respect for all others, and wishes to see justice being enjoined for all, even the poor and the most heinous amongst men, that each and everyone should be given his right to justice, to fair treatment. If this move wins over the political ideology of American hegemony and dominance, and nation states understand that we are all in the same world, which if that is destroyed, then everyone is destroyed with it, then maybe there is some hope. Okay? So I don't want to be the party pooper, spoil the whole environment when everyone says that, you know, world peace is, you know, is just around the corner. I think we still have a very long way to go, and various basic human negative instincts, that of nationalism, that of racism, that of fascism, that of greed, yeah? For as long as all these still dominate the human mind and soul, then obviously it's very difficult. I do not want to say that the Muslims are completely innocent. I mean, what I was saying is the teaching of Islam. The Muslims, not all follow Islam. I'm sure the Christians will say the same, I'm sure the Buddhists will say the same, I'm sure the Hindus will say the same, for whatever the religion teaches. The Muslims have been equally guilty of perpetuating violence, as have the Christians, as have the Buddhists, as have the Hindus, as have the atheists, as have the communists. But it all boils down to the fact that they do not want to hold on to the higher values and do not have the spirit of love for humanity, which guides them in all their actions. I'd like to end with just a statement from Sayyidina Ali, Abi Talib, the fourth caliph, who, when one of his governors asked him how should he treat the non-Muslims under the Islamic government. So Ali replied, for the Muslims, they are your brethren in faith. For the non-Muslims, they are your brethren in humanity. Act justly to all, even those who are your enemies. So that was the reply of Sayyidina Ali to one of his governors in, if I'm not mistaken, in Syria. Okay? So, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. I think that was a really, really great, interesting round of hearing about how this topic is seen from very different perspectives. I just want to double check. Vienna, I think we'll ring a bell, she was saying at 11:50 when it's time for the monks to have their lunch. How long do we go on for?
They just have to start lunch before 12 p.m.
Until 12 p.m.
They just have to start lunch before 12.
Oh, we have to start lunch before 12.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the monks, how about us? What time do we go for lunch? No, not now.
Monks can go now.
Another 10 minutes. Oh, okay. 10 minutes before 12, like that. So everyone goes for lunch at that time. Thank you very much. Sorry, I just wasn't clear about that. I just wanted to make sure that we plan the rest of the time right. You know what? That means that we've got 25 minutes. I'm sure lots of people want to say things. Is it all right if I just ask one question, one more round to all of them, and then I'll open the floor to questions?
Yep.
Yeah? I especially want to hear from the women in the audience because I'm the only one up here. Ladies, thank you. You know what struck me was what we've been talking about today is this gap between kind of inner realization of what it takes to bring peace into one's heart, into one's home, into one's community, and then into the world. One thing that I thought of was that moment that everyone wrote about after President Obama went into the garden to decide whether or not he was going to go for intervention in Syria. You remember that? What happened to him there? What was he thinking about? Was there a moment of inner reflection that happened there? I think it's one of the things that's very interesting to look at how in political discourse they don't talk about these things that we've been talking about. I feel so blessed that I'm in a room with people who are searching and want to bring these issues to the center of their lives. And it's something that they're not embarrassed to talk about, but it's so uncool for our leaders to talk about things like that, right? Yeah? I don't know about in Paz, maybe you can tell us about the extent to which, you know, we can, I don't know, but how to, because I think leaders also need to have that inner transformation, often led by the people, in order to bring the transformation into reality, because they're the ones with the power. Can I ask you just to do a quick round like the one that we did before, but even briefer if you don't mind, so that we can open the hall to, you know, in your view, in your experience, you know, where the connect, you know, whether that is something that we need to think about more in more detail and more complexity.
Thank you. I think you got to pose that question to President Obama. But if you ask from a Buddhist perspective, the first teaching the Buddha gave the world after getting enlightenment was done, orchestrated immediately after enlightenment. Remember, he was sitting under the Bodhi tree. He gained enlightenment after 6 years. You know, he broke away the shackles. There was no creator and all that. What was the first thing he did? He turned and paid gratitude. The first lesson to the world was to be grateful. He turned around, faced the Bodhi tree, and meditated for the next 7 days. So I think President Obama reflected in the same manner when he went into the garden. He suddenly found nature speaking to him. He was so thankful. He was so thankful for that. And that basically is a reflection. But if you look at religion itself, per se, what does religion ask you to do? In the Sigalavada Sutta, as a Buddhist, in the Sigalavada Sutta, the Buddha talked about your duties and responsibilities. There are no rights in religion. There are only duties and responsibilities. The duty of a child to a parent, the duty of a husband to a wife, and vice versa, employer, employee, prime minister to the nation, politicians to the nation. Their duties and responsibilities. If you do that, then you give away to corruption. Because there's the greed, the hatred, the anger, Loba, Dosa, Moha, as the Buddhist perspective, the greatest evils. But this is what happens when people in office, in the case of the Allah, when the judges did not look at the constitution of Malaysia and disseminate the law, they became part of the government's lawyers. They became an extension of the government. That is not what they are supposed to do. They are supposed to listen to the arguments. Article 3 of the Federal Constitution of Malaysia says, Islam is a religion of the Federation, but the other religions can practice in peace and harmony. But and let me tell you, when the framers of this constitution, 2 more minutes, when the framers of this constitution drafted the constitution, they gave the reason why. So the judges had no business to interpret how to read Article 3. Because Article 3 was already read prior to 1957, prior to Malaysia becoming independent. The constitution was already hammered in. People from different nations came together. Please understand this. People from different nations came together. They hammered a constitution which paved the way for the birth of Malaya, Sabah, and then in 1963 Sabah and Sarawak. So that was an injustice. That was an injustice. So if people in office, the judges carry out their duties, the civil servants carry out their duties, everybody do their duty and responsibility, then we will not be talking about peace, because we will have peace. Yeah? Thank you.
Peace is something that we or most people like to talk, but we don't like to apply to our life or to apply in reality, either President Obama or the ordinary people. As a Buddhist, we like to pray for kindness or to spread our best wishes to all sentient beings. But most people who pray like that, they hate the neighbor. They hate their neighbor in the same who have the same fence. You know. I will have to give a short remark of observation. When Buddhists as a minority, when Buddhists are the minority, they are very nice, when they are very polite. But when they are majority of a nation, sometimes ugly things happen, either in Thailand, in Burma, in Sri Lanka.
Very good.
Why? Because when Buddhists are the majority of the nation, Buddhism marry with nationalism, and it becomes religious chauvinism. Buddhism in India cannot marry with nationalism because they are not majority. But when they come majority of Thai nation, majority of Thai, of Burma, of Sri Lanka, they marry with the nationalism and become religious chauvinism. And I think it's very, very dangerous when any religion marry with nationalism. It become ugly. You know, it will be bad. You will become a part of oppressive toward other fellow beings who have different religion. I think we have to be careful. You know, this has happened in many times, in many places, in many countries. Especially, I don't know about Mahayana, but in Theravada, when Buddhists become majority, they can be ugly things, violence to other people. I think we have to be sincere with this phenomena. Because when Buddhists become majority, they feel that they are the owner of the nation, and the minority are just people, the visitors. They just come. So don't demand many rights. You don't have many rights because I am the owner of the nation. You know, to be Thai, you have to be Buddhist. You know? If you are not Buddhist, you are not really Thai. This is not what the Buddha teach. It is about nationalism. So this is what I like to give a observation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. I'm very dubious about, I don't know what happened to Obama in that garden, but I don't know what went on inside. But I think Tony Blair said that he was guided by his inner self to start the war in Iraq. And you know, we had the divine right of kings in Europe and presumably elsewhere. And I think it's a very dangerous combination, religious values, or it can go seriously wrong so easily. Even recently, 20, 30 years ago, a president in the Indian or in Southeast Asia said something like, "I'm appointed by God, you have to listen to me." Yeah? And in India, I've had so many experiences that there are rules, there are laws, but they're implemented by people who have their own particular prejudices. And so many times I've found our work is held up because of the attitude to the people I'm working with. So I believe that Buddhists should want a purely secular state, yeah? Where the laws apply to everyone in the same way, and there should be a lot of care taken in governance and their implementation. Just one thing about Dr. Ambedkar, again, the democracy he wanted, he said he did not like the democracy where the majority could dominate the minority. He wanted a different kind of democracy. How we get to that, I don't know.
Thank you. I agree with the leaders. Top leaders play key role in the determination of war and peace. I don't know about Obama, but let me just talk about the Philippines. There's a very violent war going on in Mindanao. There has been several attempts for resolution, but for instance, the peace process signed in early 90s, it eventually blew up into our face, and there was a very violent armed confrontation a few weeks ago in Mindanao. And that is a sign, proof that the peace process, the agreement, has failed. Why? Because I think the top leaders, for instance the President, was negotiating from a position of how to protect national security and outmaneuver the other side. It's not about listening, it's not about finding a common ground, it's not about transforming the relationships. But in the case of MILF now, with the peace process being brokered by Malaysia, I think there is a real good chance of it succeeding. Why? Because the leaders of two sides, President Aquino and Chairman Murad of the MILF, I think have begun to see the humanity in each other. They don't see each other now, they don't look at each other as protagonists. They look at each other as partners towards peace. And that makes a lot of difference. When there's a transformation in the mindset that we are in a post-peace process, not to defeat, not to reach a settlement, but to find a common ground as one nation, then that makes a lot of difference.
I don't know what Obama was thinking in the garden either. But as far as Syria is concerned, I think the American strategy now is just to arm the Muslims to fight themselves, without the Americans having to bring down the soldiers on Syrian soil. And they do this by giving support to a sectarian war. I mean, the Syrians have been living, the Sunnis and the Shiis have been living in Syria for the past 1,000 years. And even though the Christians and the Jews in Syria, I was in Damascus about 10 years ago. I was studying Arabic in Jordan, and I visited Damascus. There was a big central mosque, and there were 4 churches at each corner. Right? So people were living in peace at that time. Obviously, the Arab Spring raised the demands for justice and better treatment for the population. It was never a sectarian issue. It has been converted into a sectarian issue, and this is basically the work of, I'm sorry if there are any Americans, I'm not putting the blame on the American citizens, but this is as a result of the American government and their foreign policy. As far as the American government is concerned, the survival and security of Israel is tantamount, is the most paramount consideration, and they do not want a Syrian government or an Egyptian government which is interested in human values and interested in the question of justice.
So they stopped looking at you think that Syrians stopped looking at each other as fellow humans, irrespective of the sect that they belong to?
So they they added fuel to the fire, and they raised the issue of sectarian war. I mean, in Egypt, it's very clear it was a military coup d'etat. The West is completely silent. Thousands of people have been imprisoned. People have been beaten up, during the demonstrations and all that. But because in the Middle East, the question of Israel is of paramount importance. So, question of human rights and so on and so forth in the Middle East, in the other countries, particularly those neighboring Israel, is not an issue as far as America is concerned. So I think the thing is that the same thing is happening in Syria. The Saudis are giving the arms to the Sunnis.
Can you bring it back to here?
Yeah,
Are there things that are going on there that might be of value here?
of course, UMNO in trying to sideline PAS and Pakatan Rakyat from the Malays and the Muslims. Then they start a campaign against Shiism, and they accuse PAS as being, pro-Shia and so on and so forth. So basically, politics. This is where I may differ again. Yeah, politics without a moral and religious foundation. What is said as a secular politics.
But which religion is it?
I mean, any religion which teaches men to act justly.
Higher human values.
Yes, higher human values. So I do not believe in a totally secular politics, because a secular politics is a politics which is Machiavellian. I mean, it's purely a struggle for power, is what Prem did mention. Religion, when it's corrupted by nationalism, nationalism is a secular political concept, it becomes ugly. Yeah? So when religion, with all its higher values, when it gets distorted by various other considerations, then it becomes ugly. Then you act in the name of religion to do an irreligious act, and that is actually completely unacceptable. So personally, my finishing line, I believe that for PAS, I must say something for PAS, right? So I think that Tok Guru Ni Abdul Aziz Ahmad in Kelantan, as a political leader, has gone a long way in trying to establish mutual respect between all people and all religions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. We actually only have 5 minutes left, but I can see that how many people want to ask a question. I have one over here, one over here, one over here. So we have time for 3 questions. I'm going to ask you to please keep it to about a minute. Yeah? Or, sorry, Ajahn?
Mang will leave first. Mang leave.
Mang leave. Okay, just a minute.